The Baltimore Ravens lose to the Kansas City Chiefs 37-20. We touch on what that means for this team moving forward as injuries begin to mount next on Ravens Talk.
Look, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk podcast. Follow us on Instagram, on YouTube for the broadcast. Say this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk podcast. Not old news, this is new news to the whole world where they ball at. Come and listen to the former writer for the Baltimore Sports Illustrated.
Expectations versus reality, two very different things when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens. We touch on what the expectations for this team should be and the reality of the situation here as we talk about the Ravens falling to the Kansas City Chiefs. Welcome to Ravens Talk. I am your host, Njoku. Again, the Ravens fall to the Kansas City Chiefs 37-20. The score does not indicate what type of shellacking the Ravens took at Arrowhead. We touch on what that means for this team moving forward as injuries continue to mount for this franchise. We also have Chase Coburn, host of the Chase's Sports News, a frequent guest on this show. He comes back on here to talk about what this team has to do and who may be the one to blame for their shortcomings so far. We'll also touch on the Ravens versus Houston Texans, a must-win game in Week 5, but that's where we are with this Ravens team as they are currently 1-3. They cannot afford to lose another, especially with key players. One player in particular I know we were talking about out of action for at least a few weeks. But first, Ravens fall to the Kansas City Chiefs. Sucks to say it, but Ravens got their butts whooped on Sunday. And it did it not in prime time. It was the 4:25 Eastern time slot, but plenty of people got to see what the Ravens are made of. And gotta say, not much as the Ravens fall. Lots of this have to do with injuries. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Ravens are dealing with injuries. No Nnamdi Madubuike, who's dealing with a neck injury. He's out for the season, potentially longer. John Harbaugh alluded to that fact. He wants us to speak with Nnamdi Madubuike. Haven't heard from the guy, but that prognosis does not look good for Nnamdi Madubuike moving forward. But for this year, he is certainly out. Broderick Washington on IR. He seems to be on that 4-week trend, not necessarily out for the season, but certainly not available for this contest. During the contest, though, Nate Wiggins, elbow injury. We don't know his timetable. Looked pretty serious. Roquan Smith dealing with the lower body injury. He's going to be out for a certain period of time. Marlon Humphrey, who struggled this year, also dealing with a lower body injury. He's going to be out for a few weeks. Lamar Jackson, hamstring injury, out for at least 2 to 3 weeks per the Baltimore Banner. What a shellacking that's taken place for this team. A team that's stayed relatively healthy the last 2 years on the mend here in the early portion of the 2025 season. And that's why it's so important to win when you're healthy, when you have a chance. 2023, the Ravens were as healthy as I think they've ever been. Falls short to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship. Healthy season again in 2024. Goes to Buffalo. Falls short of reaching the Super Bowl once again. Turnovers were the issue. We move forward now in 2025. Your star QB out for an extended period of time. Your star linebacker, your star corner, your star interior lineman, your star pass rusher, and Calvin Noe, who we didn't mention, out for a significant period of time. We don't know when they're coming back. Pat Ricard, starting fullback, makes the whole thing flow on the running game side. He hasn't practiced since August. So lots of injuries to note. No excuses. The depth is there. The talent is there. Get the job done. The Ravens didn't do so. And now questions are mounting about whether this team has what it takes to reach the Super Bowl. Hell, we don't know if they're going to even make the playoffs at this point. That's how serious it has come. Now, the Ravens lost to the Bills, who are currently 4-0. The Ravens lost to the Lions, who are currently 3-1. And the Ravens lost to the Chiefs, who are 2-2, but reached the Super Bowl last year. So no shame in losing to these programs, but it's how they're losing that has fans concerned. And certainly, you can't lose all games against all playoff teams and that you're going to do anything if you were to happen to reach the postseason, which is clearly in doubt at this moment. So it's tough. If you're a Ravens fan, it certainly is tough. Lots of finger pointing going around. You saw my post on social media. You see where my head's at. Change is coming for this team. We don't know if Eric DeCosta is going to make some moves. We already saw that Kenyon Green has been brought in. Linebackers have been practiced on. There's all types of things flowing through the air regarding the Ravens, but it's going to be the head coach and John Harbaugh and the coaching staff in general. Zach Orr, much maligned first 2 years. He's struggling. Todd Monken, his situational play calling has been, I want to say subpar, but what's lower than subpar? beyond poop, I guess, for a lack of better terms. It's been ugly if you're a Ravens fan for sure. So lots of questions going to be answered here. John Harbaugh's seat is on fire. And again, I told you before the start of the season, it is Super Bowl or bust. The threat of potentially not even making the postseason has John Harbaugh, who's been the head coach for this team since 2008. His seat is as hot as it's been, I think, in his entire tenure. And again, this is what happens when you fail to meet your expectations. John Harbaugh said, Super Bowl's very hard to make the Super Bowl. Let's settle for more than one win. Can we settle for that? Can we settle for not collapsing in the fourth quarter again, John? That's where we're at with this football team, unfortunately. Now, during this press conference on Monday, John Harbaugh made note to kind of shield Zachary Orr from criticism and kind of use Todd Monken as a shield, as it were, to kind of put the blame on the play calling. And look, you're not going to get any arguments from me. The play calling on the offense wasn't that great. But very interesting what Jeff Zebreck said. He has a show, the Syndicate, Raven Syndicate, I believe. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, but him, Bobby Baltimore, and Cole Jackson, three guys who I very much respect in this space. They get on once a week. Go ahead and check it out. If you don't know about us on YouTube, see if something very interesting that I totally agree with. John Harbaugh doesn't say anything by accident. My initial reaction, and this is the novice in me, because I really do need to learn to shift this fandom and semi-journalism. We call it journalism. This isn't really journalism. This is content creation. But I need to make sure I separate these two when I come on the camera and talk to you guys. John Harbaugh doesn't say anything without purpose. Everything he says has meaning. He knows what he's saying. Jeff Zebreck of the Baltimore Sun, well, not Baltimore Sun, Athletic, my apologies, Jeff. Jeff of the Athletic made a great comment on that show with Cole and Bobby, where he said that Harbaugh doesn't say anything without purpose. I'm sure he talked to Todd Monken prior to, hey, I'm going to be attacking you to get something out of the players, to rally around him. He wants to see the players rally around Todd Monken on offense, because we know Kyle Hamilton on defense, they're rallying behind Zachary Orr. Zachary Orr is a player's coach. They know that Zachary Orr is under a lot of fire. They're trying to take the criticism. We're not dumb. We know that Zachary Orr has a bit to do with it, but at least we see that the team is rallying around the defensive coach on that side. I guess Harbaugh's trying to see, will the offense rally behind Todd Monken? As people are saying, Lamar Jackson, he's tired of Todd Monken, the way he calls plays. You saw how frustrated he was during the game against the Kansas City Chiefs and in various other moments throughout his tenure here in Baltimore. So John Harbaugh may be testing the waters a bit, using the media as a tool to see what this offense is going to do once he's been called out, put under the bus, whatever you want to call it. So there's a method to the madness of John Harbaugh, something that I do actually respect. So my initial reaction was, you're throwing your coach under the bus? Where's the accountability? But there's a reason why John Harbaugh is doing things. At least that's what Jeff alluded to. And I tend to agree. Something to think about as we move forward here. John kind of shielding Zachary Orr as he's taking the brunt of the criticism and using Todd Monken, who's notoriously received praise for his actions, falling short a bit in that contest. And he did. But I think this is more of the case of, let's see if this team can rally behind the criticisms come from the head coach towards the media. So something to think about there. But whatever mind games John Harbaugh is playing with the media, go for it. The fact of the matter is the results matter. You're currently 1-3. That has to improve, or you won't be the head coach. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And we'll see. I'm not going to be the one to just throw in the towel. I see a lot of fans, we're done. Lamar Jackson, no longer a quarterback for the next 2 weeks. The Steelers are 3-1. The Ravens have no shot at winning the Super Bowl. Everything's still in front of the Ravens. Are they going to be the 1 seed? No, but there was no shot at that happening anyway with the Bills, current slot of opponents. The biggest Bills opponent so far has been the Ravens in week 1. The Bills don't face another opponent worth anything until they play the Chiefs in week 8. So the Ravens weren't going to be the 1 seed. They were going to have to likely travel at some point during the postseason after dropping the first game of the season, win your division, get a home playoff game, and take care of business. The running game travels. Todd, for the love of God, on 3rd and short, 4th and short, run the ball. You have the most electric potent running back in the league right now. Saquon Barkley, dynamic as ever, but nobody has the speed and power that Derrick Henry has. Use him. Keaton Mitchell, available. Somebody get this guy a helmet. Use Keaton Mitchell. You're going to have to use him because, for goodness sake, Cooper Rush is going to need all the help he can get. That offensive line will not give you enough time to hold off the pass rushers of the Houston Texans. You're going to need a run game to lean on so that those edge rushers think twice before pinning their ears back and coming after your QB. You cannot afford to lose this game against the Houston Texans. We'll touch on it a little bit later, but when we come back, we'll have Chase Coburn, Chase's sports news host. We had him here a few weeks ago. Fans seem to love him on social media. He's back again to talk about what this team needs to do to right the ship. Is there a course of action that leads to a potential championship for the Ravens, or will change be on the horizon for the purple and black? We'll talk to him next here on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. We have with us, of course, Mr. Chase Coburn. Welcome back to the show. How you been?
I've been good. Things are going well in my life. Things are not going well in the Baltimore Ravens' life. So a lot of issues that we definitely need to tackle here today. Something the Ravens also don't do, tackling. But we could get into that also in a minute. But look, there's a contender if they could get healthy and get hot at the right time.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Little cracks of jokes sprinkled in there as the Ravens are 1-3, and tackling has definitely been an issue. Well, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs game. In fact, before we get into that, we probably should touch on the big news, which is the injuries that continue to mount for this team. Roquan Smith goes down with an injury. Marlon Humphrey goes down. Nate Wiggins and Lamar Jackson goes down to an injury. And I'd be remiss if I didn't start with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson goes down, hamstring injury. Report just came out that he's going to be out for like 2 or 3 weeks. What are your thoughts about this injury and what it could mean for the Ravens moving forward?
To be honest with you, when I first saw the hamstring injury, I just thought between the Ravens being down 17 points, Lamar had kind of been like limping throughout the game. I thought, okay, maybe just something he'll rest on, he'll be back for week 5. It was never something that really concerned me. And then all of a sudden I see the notification that it's 2 to 3 weeks. And I think the number one thing that stands out to me is 2 words, Derrick Henry, because he 8 carries against Kansas City last week, second lowest total of carries in a game in his entire career. That even goes back to Tennessee. I think it's his lowest total, tied in October of 2018, something crazy, something along those lines. So, look, he can still run the football. The question is, at this age, can he run the football effectively without the threat of Lamar Jackson? Because Cooper Rush is not even a third of the threat that Lamar Jackson is on the ground or through the air. So I think that's going to be the question, particularly with the Ravens offensive line that has disappointed. Tyler Linderbaum has not lived up to the expectation, particularly one that he set on himself, which is a $20 million, annual value contract. So he's obviously going to have to get his act together if the Ravens are going to want to run it up the gut. And the Texans have an incredible front 7. So the Ravens are going to have to lean on its rushing attack without Lamar Jackson because they're not going to be able to make the explosive plays down the field that they've made with Lamar. And the question is going to be, can the offensive line put Derrick Henry, put Justice Hill, put Keaton Mitchell, who has to play this week, can the offensive line put them in a position to run all over Houston, kind of control the time of possession a little bit, and mainly control the football game?
Yeah, I mean, you made an excellent point. We haven't seen Derrick Henry with a rushing attack that doesn't have Lamar Jackson in it since his days in Tennessee. He was, a lot of people thought, on his last leg, but he came and had a resurgent season last year with Lamar Jackson leading in charge. And when given the opportunity in 2025, he has certainly shown that he's one of the top 3 backs in all of football. But
of course, and same, I want to touch on this too, is, people didn't give Lamar Jackson, or the voters and frankly the public, did not want Lamar Jackson to be the MVP last year because he had Derrick Henry, and they said Henry made Lamar better. Sure, but Henry also had a 700-yard increase in rushing yards. So at what token is it like, how much better did Lamar make Henry? Like, there are 2 sides to the equation here. So we're going to learn a lot about Derrick Henry, the offensive line, who they kind of are collectively without Lamar as the connecting chain.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's a great point to get into, because part of the reason why Lamar Jackson didn't get that 3rd MVP is because, he had talent all around him. He had Pro Bowlers and all pros all over the roster. Those guys have yet to show up. I mean, the Ravens are starting 1-3 right now, a win against the Cleveland Browns. Many people expected that, but giving up a big lead against the Bills, losing to the Lions at home, getting demolished by the Kansas City Chiefs. How concerned are you with this 1-3 start for the Ravens? Do you think they can turn things around, or are you more concerned about waiting to see what Lamar Jackson, or when he can come back, before making that assumption for yourself?
Yeah, frankly, I feel like Something feels different with this Ravens team. This doesn't feel like their 2-2 start in 2019 that they turned around to 12 straight wins before the playoffs. It doesn't feel like the 3-2 start in 2023 that they turned around to, I think, 7 or 8 straight wins. And then a number 1 seed. This doesn't feel like the 0-2 start last year where the Ravens won 5 straight and ended up winning 12 games. It does feel different. The way that this team has played, the lack of executional skills on both sides of the ball, just how terrible the offensive line has been. It feels like the weaknesses have intensified more than ever for the Baltimore Ravens. And I feel like that includes Lamar Jackson, who maybe it's because everyone else has taken a step back, but I feel like he hasn't been the same player he was last year or the year before. And part of that is a byproduct of maybe trying to do too much or having to do too much, considering your defense could not stop a half dead rat at the current moment. So, I mean, can the Ravens turn things around? Sure. They got to win one of these next 2 games. I mean, I doubt they could beat the Rams, a Rams team that has been so explosive through the air and has a consistent running back in Kyren Williams to just run it up the gut. And that's been the Ravens' biggest problem, is containing those minimal runs. They don't allow a lot of big runs. It's more those minimal runs, and the offenses wear them down quickly. So Kyren Williams could do that. I find it very unlikely the Ravens can go out and win that football game against the Rams if Lamar Jackson's not suiting up, which at the current time it looks like he's not. They're going to have to go out. They're going to have to beat the Houston Texans this week. This is one of the biggest games for the Baltimore Ravens over the past decade, I believe, and it comes without Lamar Jackson at quarterback, which is kind of ironic and crazy, to be honest with you. So, look, this is a very, very important situation. The Ravens have to get to 2-4. They have to get healthy, but they also need regular changes, because even if this team was healthy, like they were against the Bills, like they were pretty much against the Lions and at the beginning of the Chiefs game, clearly this team has more issues than just injuries, and they're going to have to figure those out quickly, because now with a 1-3 start, probably 2-4 start, there's no margin for error. So when these guys come back, these problems need to be masked very quickly.
Yeah, and I guess let's segue to right to it, because one of the issues with this team has been coaching, and Todd Monken has been a guy who's been under fire by his own head coach, who came and said that basically the play calling wasn't, up to snuff to get the job done against Kansas City. Todd Monken's had issues running the football in key moments. His situational play calling has been poor, I guess you can say. What is your assessment of Todd Monken in the first 4 weeks of the season, especially considering that he won't have Lamar Jackson to lean on, at least for the next 2 or 3 games?
Struggling to run the ball well in important moments, not great play calling situationally. Where have I heard this before? Oh, yeah, Greg Roman. I've heard the same concerns we've had about Zach Orr, I heard with Wink Martindale. What's the common denominator? Shout it out, everyone. John Harbaugh. So as much as you want to blame the coordinators, Harbaugh runs the show. And eventually, is it John Harbaugh that's not elevating this team to the next level? Zach Orr's a different conversation. He's yet to prove that he could be a consistent commodity, but we saw Wink Martindale do some great things. Greg Roman turned Lamar Jackson from a quarterback who couldn't pass the football into an MVP who led the league in passing touchdowns. So while I'm not here to advocate for Greg Roman, trust me, I have much better things to do with my life than stick up for Greg Roman. But it is a genuine conversation of like, at what point, how long are you going to blame the coordinator? We've been blaming the coordinators for 7 years. Like, at what point does the head coach have to take some accountability? He's won 4 playoff games in 13 years after winning 9 in his first 5 with Ray Lewis and Joe Flacco. So at what point does the man in charge have to take some accountability? At what point is he on the hot seat? Because right now, I think he's the problem. If the offense isn't working well and the defense isn't working well, and I don't think they've been well on special teams, the common denominator is John Harbaugh. And so, frankly, Harbaugh creates the game plan. Harbaugh, I'm sure, is involved in a lot of those 4th down decisions. Harbaugh has played the games recently, in recent years. He's played to not lose instead of to win. The Dan Campbells, the Andy Reids, the Nick Siriannis, they go out there and they say, I want to go win the football game. Harbaugh plays not to lose. And when he's asked to make play calls and scheme the game so that you can go and win the football game, his team hasn't executed well. And part of that is his fault. Has Harbaugh lost the locker room? That's another conversation. I've never seen this team lack the physical edge that they have not had. That has been completely decimated since that Buffalo game. I think maybe that was the turning point. But we could sit here and blame Todd Monken. We could sit here and blame Zach Orr. Yeah, they need to do their jobs a lot better. But so does the man in charge. John Harbaugh needs to take a ton of responsibility for the glaring weaknesses and problems on this Ravens roster.
Well said. I mean, with that, what do you think is going to happen here at the end of the season? What happens with John Harbaugh? Do you think that this is his last year? What will he need to do to save his job? Because you're right. I think that seat is quite hot, especially after this 1-3 start.
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine because usually for me, when you have one of the best rosters in the NFL every single season and you don't convert and you don't win a Super Bowl, you don't make a Super Bowl. I'm going to take it a step further. You don't lead in the games against the biggest teams in the AFC to make the Super Bowl, like Kansas City, like Buffalo in the playoffs. When you don't even keep yourselves in the game of the first half and have to rely on an incredible second half to get you back there. Like at one point, you probably think at this point, yeah, he had to have been gone. But Harbaugh has a Lifetime Achievement Award, it feels like, in Baltimore. And so, frankly, I don't know what the timetable is. I thought there could have been an outside chance. I was checking my phone a lot on Monday morning because I thought there could have been an outside chance that the Ravens parted ways with John Harbaugh after a 1-3 start. I think now with the Lamar Jackson injury, that's unlikely because you're not going to fire him now if they lose another game with Lamar Jackson injured. You probably can't hold that on him. And then at that point, you're going to get too much into the season. You're just going to play it out at that point. But you do not want to waste a season with Lamar Jackson if the Ravens are in the mix. Eventually, this combination is not working. I don't know if it's Lamar. I don't know if it's Harbaugh. Right now, the combination is not working. I think that eventually, if you don't win the Super Bowl this season, John Harbaugh should have to take a lot of accountability, particularly if this team does not make the playoffs. I understand the injuries, but oh my goodness, as the Super Bowl favorites. I mean, goodness gracious. Again, for me, I don't know what the timetable is because a lot of teams part ways with coaches quickly. They're not afraid to. In the NBA, the Raptors did it with Nick Nurse. The Lakers did it with Frank Vogel. The Bucks did it with Mike Budenholzer. The Nuggets did it with Michael Malone. Literally less than 2 years removed from winning a championship, they parted ways with their coach. How about in baseball? The manager, Bruce Bochy, just got fired by the Texas Rangers 2 years after winning a World Series. Doug Peterson fired by the Eagles 3 years after winning a Super Bowl. It has been 13 years almost since John Harbaugh has won a Super Bowl in Baltimore. At some point, you have to think they're going to part ways. The question becomes, is the grass greener on the other side? I don't know, but they need a new voice. They need a new captain. They need a new leader. Because Lamar's a great leader on the field, but he's not kind of that vocal guy in the locker room. They need a Ray Lewis type, but a head coach. They need that kind of a leader. One that's not dancing after one playoff win against the Houston Texans. Okay? One that's not dancing for clinching the number 1 seed. Been there, done that, got that t-shirt. Eventually, if this team does not improve in the postseason, I'm looking at you, John Harbaugh. I'm looking at you. And the Ravens should too at some point. But I don't know when that is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I've made note of this time and time again about John Harbaugh. Again, it's Super Bowl or bust for me. If he doesn't win a championship, you got to get rid of him. But I don't know if it happens in the middle of the season for reasons that you pointed out. Lamar Jackson's injured, of course, as well as his tenure in Baltimore. I think Steve Bisciotti would want to keep him here at least until the end of the season because, one, who are you going to replace him with right off the bat? Do you just
it would be Pagano, I think, right?
Pagano would be the guy.
Yeah.
So Chuck Pagano would probably be the logical choice there. But, man, it would have to be a catastrophic meltdown, I think, for Steve Bisciotti to make that push. But you're right. I think that time is running short. John Harbaugh needs to take this seriously. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about this.
Sammy, real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but like a lot of people like to bring up John Harbaugh and his consistency, and that's part of it. Like the Ravens are always in the mix with John Harbaugh. Like even when he didn't have great quarterbacks and great teams as a whole, he always kept the Ravens in the mix. And sure, that's fine. But again, it goes back to playing not to lose, not playing to win. Eventually, have you reached your ceiling? You can elevate your floor, but can John Harbaugh elevate your ceiling? That's still to be seen. And I feel like in the biggest games, back-to-back games now, have exemplified this against Dan Campbell and the Lions and Andy Reid and the Chiefs. It feels like the opposition is playing chess and Harbaugh's trying to keep up in a game of checkers. And I that's not sustainable. And I think the Ravens are going to find that out sooner rather than later if they haven't already.
What about Mike Tomlin? Mike Tomlin's kind of in a similar boat there in Pittsburgh. Do you put him under that same scrutiny as you would John Harbaugh?
I would, and I have. But I think the only reason why Harbaugh is a little bit more disappointing is because Mike Tomlin, at least for the past 5 years, I think has had 5 different starting quarterbacks. Actually, I think what the stat is since Big Ben retired, they have started a different quarterback in week 1 and week 18. And it's not because they've clinched anything. It's just that's not sustainable. And so for Mike Tomlin to have that team in postseason contention every year with Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, now a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Like, to me, that's more impressive than going 12-5 with Lamar Jackson, which he's proven to be able to do. So, again, Harbaugh has elevated your floor. He's taken you to the postseason. Can he take you to the next level? I'm not sure. But Tomlin, for sure, in a similar boat, but I think just a little bit of a different circumstance.
Yeah, I love Mike Tomlin, but you're absolutely right. Different situation, different roster. I think Mike Tomlin takes this roster to the championship and then some. Some people may not agree with that, but he works more with less. He does more with less, and it seems that John Harbaugh is doing less with more. Let's talk about the Houston Texans matchup. At a microscope, this team needs to get the job done here. This front seven of the Houston Texans is really relentless again at the quarterback. With Cooper Rush starting, what are your keys to victory here against the Texans team in the game that the Ravens have to have?
So this is a topic that not a lot of people like to talk about. Can you remember off of the top of your head, excluding the 2 against Cleveland this year, 3 takeaways that the Baltimore Ravens have made since Mike Macdonald left? I'm sure they have. I'm sure it's at like 6 takeaways or 7 takeaways. But I can't remember like 2 off the top of my mind, because this was a defense in 2023, a team as a whole. They didn't turn the ball over, and every team turned it over against them. 5 interceptions against the 49ers on Christmas. They contained Tua the game after, and again, that was the best team in the NFL. To me, one of the greatest teams of all time because of the takeaway ratio. That takeaway ratio, it's not there anymore because the Ravens are giving it over more than they have in the past, and they're not forcing takeaways against the top teams. I don't count 2 takeaways against a 40-year-old Joe Flacco to say, yeah, you got your takeaways, you can take 2 games off. So eventually they're going to need to force turnovers and force CJ Stroud into tough situations like they have in the past, right? The Texans have not scored an offensive touchdown against the Baltimore Ravens. With CJ Stroud at quarterback. They scored 3 field goals in that season opener in 2023. Then in the postseason, they scored a special teams touchdown, a punt return touchdown. And last year, they got 2 points from, I believe, a safety, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think what was a 31-2 final. So the Texans are yet to prove that they can make the big plays with CJ Stroud. The offensive line is completely decimated. They tried to switch things up with a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive line coach, but it's only worked against the 0-4 Tennessee Titans. So this is not a great team on the other side. Again, can the loss of Lamar Jackson be too much? I'm not sure, but the Ravens are number one going to need to force takeaways out of CJ Stroud to put their offense without Lamar Jackson in a position to go out and score points. And then I think I mentioned this on my show, but give Derrick Henry the football. The Ravens are second to last in the NFL in plays per game. They've lost a time of possession in 4 straight games. And the best way to have your defense not allow a lot of points is to keep your injury-riddled, disastrous defense off of the field. Don't let them touch the field. And so go do what the Lions did. I know it's going to be tough, but have those 90-yard drives if you have to. Just wear them down, because I think the Ravens can with Derrick Henry if Linderbaum can step up, and they have enough offensive weapons where you can't just pay attention to Henry, because Rush is capable enough to get it to a Zay Flowers, to get it to a Mark Andrews, to get it to a DeAndre Hopkins. So I do think the Ravens need to run the football. And then one of those other options too, I think Rashod Bateman needs a big day. I think this is where we need to see Bateman emerge as another one of those top threats for Baltimore. So if you want to get 3 keys, force takeaways on CJ Stroud to put your offense in a good position, run the football / kind of control the time of possession. It's kind of go with each other in a sense. And then have a secondary option step up. Maybe that's a Rashod Bateman. Maybe that's like a Devontae Walker. But at this point, it's a next man up mentality across the board, and you're going to need heroes offensively and defensively.
Keaton Mitchell, potential coming back. What do you think about that?
The Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh, needs to look me in the eye and tell me that Rashid Ali does more for a football team than Keaton Mitchell. Like, there has to be something going on. I'm not in the Ravens facility. I don't know what's going on, but there's no way that Keaton Mitchell, the way that he looked in preseason, the way that reports were at a training camp, there's no reason why he should not be on this roster. He was so explosive, one of the best running backs in the league in that 6-7 week stretch in 2023. And now we're not even seeing him on the field. Like, there has to be something else going on. And I think this is the perfect opportunity, because you're losing all of those explosive plays with Lamar Jackson. Put in Keaton Mitchell. Try something different, because the rushing attack hasn't been there and the offense has suffered. Look at how the offense has played in 3 straight games where the running game just hasn't gotten going. It hasn't been that great. Hasn't been pleasurable to watch. And so maybe Keaton Mitchell can be that bright spark to unlock the running game, thus unlock the offense, so that when Lamar Jackson comes back, they're running full head of steam toward the postseason. I think you got to put Mitchell in this game, and I think he can make an impact.
Let's see if it happens. I have my concerns. I have my doubts. Seems like the reason why he's not on the field is nothing's changing with that. Justice Hill's still healthy. Rasheen Ali's still healthy. But I agree with you. You got to get Keaton Mitchell in the game. There's no reason to exclude him from that. It's just, it's annoying. It's annoying to say the least.
And I mean, for the Ravens to keep not rostering him, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And I feel like that's the Ravens sticking with John Harbaugh and then John Harbaugh sticking with the exact same roster. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. You're 1-3, you're on life support. Try something different. And I think Keaton Mitchell could be that difference maker.
I agree with you completely. I think he can certainly be that guy. Let me get your outlook for the remainder of the season and know lots of things can happen between now and January. Do you think this team still has a shot at making the postseason, at winning the division, at making the Super Bowl run? What are your thoughts about this team after 4 weeks of football action?
The Bengals have scored, I believe, 13 points in 2 games. Joe Burrow's probably out for the season. They're done. Even if he's back in the latter end of the season, they're going to have 5 wins at that point, if that. So they're out of the mix. The Browns are not doing anything with Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, or one of the 20,000 quarterbacks that are in that room. They're done. Bye-bye. The Steelers are kind of the other team to look at. They haven't played well, and the schedule does start to get a little bit tougher from here. I think estimating they'll finish with 9 to 10 wins. The question is, can Baltimore get there too? And that requires going 9-4 to get to 10 wins in your next 13 games, 2 of which are probably going to be without Lamar Jackson. So I think, again, the goal for the Ravens has to be get this win against the Texans, try to spark something against the Rams. You're probably not going to win that game, so you're going to be sitting at 2-4 going into the bye. Hopefully Roquan Smith is healthy at that point. Hopefully Lamar Jackson is healthy at that point. And hopefully 2 more games just working with this roster can help the Ravens figure things out. I think the injury bug is going to hurt them for the next 2 weeks. But they have the bye. And I never could have imagined this week 7 bye would be so important. But it actually is. Because that's an extra week where a lot of these guys would be missing time. And instead it's just the bye week. So I think, again, go 1-1 these next 2 games. You're 2-4. That's fine. You can't change the past. You can't rewrite the past. But then a lot of these guys do get healthy. It's not long-term concerns for Smith, for Humphrey, for Lamar in particular, for Ricard. She should be back soon too, which could also help kind of unlock the running game. And you're going to see Isaiah likely get more involved. So if you are 2-4, then you have a home game against the Bears and you're healthy, full head of steam. I think it's the Bears, the Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Browns in those next 4 games. There's no reason why the Ravens can't go 3-1 or 4-0 in those games. And then all of a sudden you look up and the Ravens are 6-4 or 5-5 and the playoffs feel attainable. And if you let this team get hot and get healthy, look, while they have had so many awful, awful issues, they've also played the Bills on the road, the Lions, the Chiefs on the road. And yes, you're going to have to fix those issues when you're going to face them in the postseason. But in the meantime, you have easier competition. The Ravens are too talented to not execute on that opportunity. So again, 1-1 in your next 2 games. Win at least one of these next 2 against Houston or Los Angeles. Go into the bye, get healthy, and go full throttle. And if Lamar Jackson is full throttle and this team is starting to figure things out, I wouldn't count Baltimore out of the postseason. What's going to happen in the postseason? That's the next question. That's the next conversation that we dive into. But that's not the conversation now. The Ravens can still very well make the postseason. They just got to get through these next 2-3 weeks, which are going to be brutal. But if they can get through still alive, still with even a little bit of hope, Lamar can take them to the promised land.
I like your thought process. I think I agree with you completely in that regard. Ravens are close. They got just get through these next 2 weeks, get healthy, and then full steam ahead into the postseason. So I like your thought process. Well, thank you, Chase, so much for joining us here at the Ravens Talk Podcast. Much appreciated. We'll definitely have you on again soon. Tell the folks at home where they can find you and what you're working on.
Well, you guys can find me Chase's Sports News on YouTube. That's where I post all my content. You guys can see all my individual podcasts, a lot of work with the Baltimore Ravens. You can follow me on Twitter or X at Cool Sports Kid, on Instagram, Chases_sports_news. We do a lot of work across professional and collegiate sports, credential for games, doing a lot of Baltimore Ravens and NFL content. We just previewed every single team season on the podcast. We're over 1,000 subscribers over there now. So please be sure to check me out over there. And Samuel, I can't thank you enough for having me on. I know the last time we connected, I said that Jay Higgins should be on the roster and 2 million people got to see the takes. So I'm so glad that we were able to connect again. Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course, yeah, you are the star of the show for sure. And everybody knows this guy doesn't just do Raven stuff. He's a sports content creator. He knows all things sports, not just football. So make sure you check out his stuff. I'll leave links in the description with his work. And yeah, 2 million people watch your stuff. And I think 2 million more will probably tune in for some more stuff with you here on Ravens Talk. So again, appreciate you so much for joining us. When we come back, we'll talk more about the Ravens and Texans and where we see this team moving forward here next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Again, that was Chase Coburn with Chase's Sports News on here talking Ravens football. Love his takes as always. Very funny guy, very knowledgeable guy. Knows his stuff for sure. Great to have him on the show. We'll be sure to have him back again. Interesting points. Great points by Chase all around. This team is lacking a voice in the locker room. Can John Harbaugh turn things around? He did it in 2012. He will need to do it again here because if he doesn't, sucks to say it, but he may be out of work here. The Ravens may be looking at a new direction. There's too much talent on this team to fall short of a championship, and there's a chance they may not even make the playoffs. Injuries are not unacceptable given the depth. There are worse teams around the league, even with the depth, even with the injuries, I should say, on this roster. The Ravens probably still match up better than the Bills, and the Bills are 4-0. Now, again, the Bills have a soft schedule. That's not the point. The point is the Ravens, even if Roquan Smith's out, even with Marlon Humphrey out, the Ravens still have depth. As long as Lamar Jackson returns, that's the big one. With Lamar Jackson, this team can still compete for a playoff spot and even a championship in an AFC that doesn't look that great. I know the Ravens just got bombarded with slams after slams from the Kansas City Chiefs on the offensive side of the ball, but this team still is up there with the upper echelon in the AFC. Could make a run for a championship if they get their act together. But time's a wasting. Every game counts. It starts against the Houston Texans. The Ravens will need to run the ball, like I said earlier on the show. Run the ball with Derrick Henry. Keaton Mitchell better be active. John, activate Keaton Mitchell. Get him ready to go. Use 2 running backs. Use 3 running backs. Use 3 tight ends. Whatever it takes. Keep the ball away from Cooper Rush's hand unless he absolutely has to. Make the play action a weapon. But to do that, you need to establish the run. I don't have to tell you what you already know. Establish the run. Sets up the pass. That's how you're going to get these win. People are canceling out the Los Angeles Rams. I'm not ready to do that yet. Let's see what Cooper Rush does here against the Houston Texans. And they'll tell me a lot about what this team is capable of moving forward. That's going to do us for here at Ravens Talk again. Special thanks to Chase Coburn for reaching out and coming on the show. Great to have him on. Definitely will have him on again soon. Hope you guys enjoyed the content with him. We'll be back next week, hopefully after a Ravens win. Win, lose, or draw, we'll be here talking about it. Ravens need to take care of business against the Houston Texans. They have a big must-win Week 5 game against C.J. Stroud up next. Hopefully they get the job done. If not, conversation could be a little bit uglier than it was this week. That's going to do it for us here at Ravens Talk. I'm your host, Sam Njoku, and I'll see you next week.